Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
Yeah, I'll motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? No. Okay, let's go to the first item, approval of Russell Branch Sewer Pumping Station Design Task Order.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. My name is Amulya Paudel, Program Manager with Capital Programs. I'm here this morning to seek your approval on contract amendment for the design task order for Russell Branch Sewer Pump Station project. The project is in central service area in Ashburn along Route 7 and Belmont Ridge Road. Loudon Water has existing pump station, existing 0.5 MGD pump station that was built in 2002 to generally serve this development. It's existing, but it is a developer-built pump station. The new pump station, a Russell Branch pump station, will be on the west side of Belmont Ridge Road, just east of Goose Creek. And this pump station will be a bigger capacity pump station that will handle flow from existing sewer shed as well as eastern portion of Leesburg Joint Land Management area. So at a high level, what we're trying to accomplish with the project in this area is the existing pump station here east of Belmont Ridge Road will be decommissioned and demolished. The flow that's coming into the existing pump station will be diverted to the new pump station via gravity sewers. In the future, the developers will install another gravity sewer line that'll bring flow from the JLMA, eastern portion of the JLMA into this pump station. And this new pump station will discharge flow back to the gravity sewer east of Belmont Ridge Road. So these two force mains eventually will extend up to the gravity sewer that's on the east side of Belmont Ridge Road. This project, the design phase of the project, the board approved the design phase of this project in June 2021, and the authorized budget at the time was $406,000. One thing I want to point out here is prior to board approval back in June 2021, staff had coordinated with the property owner to obtain the easement for the project, and there was like a general agreement, and they agreed. And only after securing property owner's agreement to grant the easement, this was brought in front of the board back in 2021. However, things changed. So this, I want to go back. This parcel here, where the property, where we're seeking easement, where we need easement to install the pump station, this property had by
Hey, AJ. Did you, I see you.
He's doing, yeah, I was gonna say, I want to ask a question while he said, yeah, you had stated when we started, what was the existing MGD of the existing pump?
0.5.
0.5,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and the new one will be
4.5,
4.5
yeah,
MGD.
okay.
Yeah. Should I continue? Kind of pause for a while they develop their site plans. We needed a significant easement from them for pump station, all the linear utilities on the parcel. So after looking at how this request impacts our project overall, we found it acceptable. And I'll be talking more about this in the next few slides, but I want to kind of give you where we are today with this project. So as of now, we are in bid phase. We are accepting bids. The bids are scheduled to be opened May 15th, and we anticipate bringing the award of construction in front of you in the June CIP meeting. And I also want to make a point, like this is a significant delay, as you see from what we originally planned. But what we've been able to do is, so Vantage itself is the biggest beneficiary of this. They are the first developer that would bring flow into this pump station. And we've been having biweekly, monthly calls with them to coordinate construction of other linear utilities. We were able to get them install some of the linear utilities, which resulted in cost savings to Loudon Water too, more efficient way to do those linear utilities. And so this delay does not impact Loudon Water's ability to serve any other future developments in that general area. So we were able to make some temporary provisions for Vantage. When you drive through that area, you see they're already putting a building up there. But we were able to make some temporary provisions to serve them. So in summary, this delay has not impacted our Loudon Water's ability to serve the development in the area. This picture taken about a little more than a month ago. As you see, this is a huge construction site, almost 90 acres in construction. So Belmont Ridge Road here, Route 7. Our pump station sits kind of, so this is Goose Creek over here, and our pump station sits right east of Goose Creek. And our linear utilities kind of take this would, by completion, this would be an access road to our pump station, and that's where majority of our linear utility would be. So a major change like this, the property ownership changed hands. What that put us in this project is it resulted in us having to do additional design coordination with the developers. Like I said, the easement was not recorded at the time, and with the developer site plan and impact to our site plan, a significant coordination with the county attorney's office was required. We had to pause the design of the pump station for a year. While the pump station design itself was put on hold for about a year, we were coordinating with the developer on the linear side of things, easement. So certain component of this project was still advancing while the pump station design itself was on hold. And I think I kind of touched on this. So while the developers were also experiencing some delays, so it hasn't impacted our ability to serve the developers in the area. So in terms of, so I talked about the schedule impact. We were able to mitigate the schedule impact of this ownership change. However, like I said on the previous slide, there were some additional services that was needed. We extended design period resulted in extended project management, a second round of QA and QC of the design documents, a lot more meetings and coordination than originally planned for the project. And design revisions. So these additional services resulted in the project incurring additional cost than originally anticipated. The board approved $386,000 for HDR's design fee, $19,500 for contingency, with a total authorized budget of $406,000. This request today, so we negotiated with HDR and agreed on additional services fee of $50,700. So the request today is to add $50,700 to the contract. I believe this is my last seat before the motion. So I'll pause here and any questions.
I just have a question. You mentioned there was 90% of the design change or design had occurred before change of ownership.
Yeah.
Just curious, the determination of going to 4.5 MGD, when was that? How, I guess, was that determined before? I guess, when did that?
So this project has been in the books for a long time, right? So before the JLMA days, so we already knew that 0.5 MGD would not be sufficient. Yes. So we had started a project back in, now this was before my times, but I think around 2017 to upgrade it from 0.5 to 1.5. And that design was taken to almost 100%. And that is when the JLMA came along. And we, through planning, modeling, we realized this 1.5 was, we needed to upsize it further, right? So that's when it was determined that for the ultimate build out, 4.5 MGD is what we need. It is not an immediate need, and I can kind of go back to this slide here. As you see it here, so with this project here, we're going to be kind of tying back this force main into an existing 8-inch main. So for the time being, for the next 4 or 5 years, we do not need 4.5. That 4.5 is ultimate build, and we're projecting that to be needed around 2035, 36 timeframe. So yeah, that's 4.5 is for the ultimate build
But
out.
there's modeling that's has occurred.
Yeah,
Determined.
yeah.
Understood.
So yeah,
Okay.
that's when from the initial goal from 0.5 to 1.5 was upgraded to 4.5 after
After that
JLMA.
100%
Yes.
capacity being met. Understood. Thank you. Thank you.
Morning. I have a couple of questions. The 19.5, that was the contingency, has that been exhausted already? Or was the change order for 70 grand and negotiated down?
So that out of that 19,500, at the time this was originally scoped, the surge analysis was still in progress. So it excluded the surge tank design, but after the board approved this, it was the surge analysis resulted that a surge tank is needed, and that portion of that $15,000 of that contingency was used for surge tank design. So there is about $4,000 left in the contingency, but technically the project is still not. I mean, it's in bid, so we are not tapping into that contingency. This is just a request for purely added services on the project.
Will we realize some savings in the construction? Because I guess the original plan had a long haul road down to the pump station, and now we're traveling through paved areas through the data center. So
Yes, we will. We've already, some of this linear construction contract has already been executed, and we're definitely seeing savings. Just that if we had waited for them to do the work, now you were talking about disturbing the hardscape that they would already have put in place and all the restoration, right? Now with the developer doing it, we definitely see savings on that side, on the linear project, and same with the access road.
because my thought was if there was no savings on the construction end, this was sort of triggered by the developer. But if we're seeing a savings on the construction end, it makes, shouldn't be bending over to pick up pennies as the dollars are flying out the road.
It's a great question, and I think Amelia hit on it earlier. There's been great coordination with the developer, not only with this team in the capital project, but the land development group. WeTran's been actively involved in, negotiating for things to be installed with Vantage's project, the linear utilities, and that's been a tremendous savings in addition to what you were pointing out, and likely savings during the actual construction of our work. So waiting has had its trade-offs, but it seems to have been of a net benefit to Loudon Water.
And last one is not a question, but a comment. I know Russell Branch Parkway is going to be done by the developer to the east, which I guess is JK Land also. And that force main follows the alignment of what was at one point the Russell Branch Parkway. So I'm sure that design and that construction will hopefully not disrupt that force main.
Yeah, I personally have not been involved, but I know our LD team is already looking at this future extension of that 12-inch and and we know the gravity sewer downstream needs to be upsized at some point in the future. And those are kind of in the planning works right now, not part of this project.
And does that force main need to be upsized all the way up to the north-south portion of Russell Branch all the way to the east, or does it remain the same size? Do we know? Is that part of our CIP?
This will have to, if you, like you see in this exhibit, what this project will do is we will be extending the 12-inch force main, and for the next few years, we will just tie it back to the existing 8-inch. But as next phase work, this 8-inch would have to be upsized to 12-inch.
Okay.
And then second phase after that, this 12-inch, which kind of would be terminated just west of Belmont Ridge Road with this project, that would eventually have to be extended all the way to the downstream gravity.
Thank you for satisfying the nerd in me.
Just a question, is the contractor who's building the data center, is that one of the potential bidders for this pump station?
No, so.
Not the same.
No, our bid, our qualification in this requires the contractor to have, pump station experience, but the contractor doing the work is pure linear contractor. So they're contracted through Vantage. We deal directly with Vantage, and Vantage does not go after public municipal projects like this.
Are there any other questions?
With that, I'll put the motion in front of you.
I'll make the motion. I move the recommendation to the board to authorize the general manager to execute an amendment to the design task order contract with HDR for the Russell Branch Sewer Pump Station project to increase the design contract by $50,700 for a total authorized budget not to exceed $456,700. Additional costs will require board approval. All in favor?
Aye.
And this goes to consent.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next item, approval of design task order sewer meter vault replacements in Countryside and Great Falls Forest.
Right, good morning, committee chair, committee members. Big thank you for having me today. Always a pleasure to talk to you. For those who don't know me, my name is Kinsey Downs. I'm the program director of remote facilities, and I'm here today to seek the approval of a design task order for Countryside 1, Countryside 2, Great Falls Forest 1, and Great Falls Forest 2 sewer metering vault replacements. All right, so Loudon Water owns 28 sewer metering vaults that are along the Potomac Interceptor, which is a DC water asset or managed asset. And those metering vaults are used for monitoring flow. We report those to DC water for, I guess, along that contract and for billing purposes. We also use the data to kind of understand the health of the sewer shed, as well as any changes in the sewer shed. Kind of really helps us earmark what we need to focus on and why. These vaults are important to us. Because of that data. Naturally, they're old and they do get nice wear and tear on them. If you think about kind of some rules about the trunk sewer, they're in low-lying areas. So from a site plan asset, they're kind of hard to get to. They're kind of near floodplains, and that has some wear and tear on the asset. Additionally, sewer flows themselves are corrosive in nature, so the components and assets of the structure also tend to fail and not realize their useful life if not maintained properly. So there's just some natural hurdles with sewer metering vaults. The graphic I have on the screen locates all 28 of our sewer metering vaults for the PI. The 4 we're talking about today are in the yellow boxes. A real quick lesson on sewer metering vaults. These usually manhole or vault type structures that have a flume-like device in them that slow the flow down so we can get a vertical measurement out that relates to flow. Naturally, these structures have electronics in them and instrumentation, and we had to have personnel go down in there and maintain them over time. So there is an egress component to these structures and the need to get down there ever so often. I guess additionally, that's not shown on this graphic. This is the Countryside 1 graphic, just for reference to what we're talking about today. There are above ground support facilities, either panel boxes or support buildings that help electrical devices as well as off-site communication. Around 2022, we contracted with one of our environmental BOAs, Kroll Engineers, to do an assessment of all 28 vaults. We wanted to kind of do a health gauge on what our devices are and what we need to do. That led to an assessment report where they kind of gave us a roadmap, if you will, to how we can, I guess, address deficiencies over time in a very scheduled manner, right? So they kind of looked at the vaults and they graded them to as little as do nothing, emergency action, complete within 5 years, and complete within 10 years. You know, we like the 5 and 10 year window because it kind of matches how we approach our CIP with the spending. We didn't really ask them to go beyond 10 years because we thought that was maybe asking a little too much of them. Also, it led to destructive testing, and we really didn't want to go that far into our vaults to find something out that we might maybe know later. This is the report that led to the recommendation to group the Countryside and Great Falls Forest sewer metering vaults together as a single package because they're full replacements. This is an example of Countryside 1. You can expect similar photos from the other vaults, but this is from that assessment. And you can see kind of in the upper right and lower right pictures that the sewer gas has led to some corrosion of the concrete, exposing maybe some of the losing some depth to that concrete. We also have a picture of the flume. The flume is a structure itself that can be damaged. This one looks fine. However, you can see how it mates to the benchable side. And if that is not whole, we can have flow by and we can't measure that flow. Additionally, you can see the manhole on top, it's rusted. Rust itself is not a great indicator of something not performing. However, you can see that the older style, when it was installed around 1980, it's not very big. That notebook is tight in that window. So staff does have to make proper accommodations to access these vaults and to do it in a safe manner. So that leads to the scope of work. You know, we're looking for a design to completely replace these 4 sewer metering vaults. These are the items we tasked our consultant with. These are traditional with what we see from someone providing plans and specifications for bidding purposes. Just to note some kind of unusual aspects to this job, we will have to consider bypass pumping, right? We still need to manage flow as it goes to the PI, so we'll need to have a bypass pumping plan, as well as we understand the limits of the floodplain and if we affect it or not, right? I believe there's some opportunities for us not to ping it, but naturally, as we look at the construction site and as we look at mobilization, we may start being affected by that. Additionally, permitting is a large item. It'll be handled by a sub-consultant. And there is definitely, we trigger almost most permitting because the location we are and maybe the disturbance we're having. When it comes to economy of scale, grouping them 4 together in a construction kind of approach is very advantageous. It's a great win. However, we do require 4 permits for each site. So we kind of increase permitting when it comes to the design component.
Just ask a question real quick. So where's the economy of the scale with the grouping? Is there permitting or is there other aspects?
The economy scale will be in the construction. So we have
Okay.
one firm doing all 4 sites. They
Okay.
may be able to get some wins by pricing things
Okay.
together and having some lessons learned they can apply in later ones.
Okay.
Thing, you mentioned electronic data collection stuff in that environment. How do you protect that, the electronic equipment?
So we replaced a lot. So if we're down in the vault or the manhole, right, we're replacing that transducer probably more often than we like. A lot of the major components are above ground, away from the back environment. But
Oh, I
those
thought they
structures are
were
just as
in
old.
the vault.
No, we have some above ground features that also complement the in-grade instrumentation. Attached to the fee breakdown, you'll see the total is $185,350. Just want to highlight 2 of these for discussion purpose today. The permitting is by J2, the sub-consultant, as well as the permitting contingent items. So understanding that we may or may not ping some of the wetlands permits, we're going to hold this in a contingent line item in the proposal, or I guess in the design task order, to be released by staff if we trigger those items. So the idea is not to have it all available, but to trigger as an as-need basis so we have a little better control on the spending.
See number.
Yes. Yep, and J2 is a sub in this one. They're also a civil BOA for Loudon Water as well. Real quick, tying this back to our CIP. Here's our CIP snapshot. The project is listed as Waste 38. We do have $180,000 for 2024 spending for design purposes, which does align with our fee. And we also have a 10-year CIP budget of $2.25 million. From a schedule perspective, we would look to kick off in Q3 of this year and take the design into early next year, bid the project and award construction. If everything goes according to plan, we should have this back in front of the board and about, looks like Q2 of next year. This is the final slide. It's a recommended motion. It does include 5% to be controlled by the general manager. Happy to address any questions.
Are there any other questions? I'll make the motion on this one also. I move the recommendation to the board to approve award of a design task order for the sewer metering vault replacement, Countryside and Great Falls Forest to Corolla Engineers for an estimated cost of $185,350 with an approximate 5% contingency to be controlled by the general manager for a total authorized budget of $195,000. Additional costs will require board approval. And I'm making this motion to go to consent. Do I have a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
All in favor, say aye. Nobody opposed.
Thank you.
Okay, next, capital construction quarterly report.
All right, good morning. My name is Rick Zafel. I'm going to go ahead and lead off the first quarter capital construction report here, and then I'll pass it to Sam Flores for a few slides, and then back to me to wrap it up. So our agenda here for this morning. So we're going to give a couple of project status snapshots on some of the smaller projects here, just a one slide update on those particular projects, and then we'll get a little deeper into the Milestone Reservoir Pump Station project, as well as the Broad Run expansion. And then we'll wrap up the presentation with our quarterly numbers, going over the active, completed, and then up and coming construction projects. So starting off the snapshots here, we've got the Broad Run reclaimed water pump station capacity upgrade. So this project has been in construction for well over a year now. We are a little over 75% spent on the contract value through the end of the first quarter. The contractor has completed most of the major work. We've got our check valve replacements done. Our piping and valve work is also complete. Our new pumps are in. Most of the INC upgrade work is done. And then what's left to go here is the VFD installations, or the variable frequency drive installations for the new pumps. And then we also need to complete the HVAC work and then wrap up with the commissioning or testing and startup of our new facilities. And so with that, I'm going to pass it to Sam for a few slides here.
Good morning, everyone. I will be presenting on a couple of the capital programs projects, starting with a highlight on the Beaver Dam Reservoir Park project. And I wanted to highlight this one for a couple of reasons, mainly, recognizing the interest from our board and our public in the project and its progress, and recognizing that at the end of this reporting period, we had not met our contractual substantial completion date, which we recognized earlier in the job would be an issue given some design challenges and some other site related issues that we were dealing with. But as we sit here today, Nova Parks is on site assembling to start receiving demonstrations for some of the more technical facilities on the project site. The floating docks, some folding doors at the crew facility, which is reflective of just how close we are to wrapping this up. So at the end of the reporting period, we were about $16 million spent through the end of the first quarter of 2024, and the remaining 10% mostly will cover planting work, which we were unable to perform during the fall planting window of 2023. Again, due to these design challenges that we were working through and some of the delays we saw in being able to get on site and get things started. Now, as we are in the spring planting window, we are getting that work going, and the site looks great. If you were to visit it, today, you would see that there's a lot of progress. Things are starting to turn green, and it really is sort of starting to fulfill the vision of the architect's intent here. So a lot of coordination to get those remaining architectural and planting features really solid before we wrap things up. Sometime end of May, early June is the current projection for completion on that project. So maybe I'll pause there and ask if you all have any questions on that.
Can you elaborate on the remaining facilities? I heard you mention the crew facility, and then I see the floating docks. Are there any other facilities that are, as far as build out?
So those are built. So Nova Parks is assembling this very morning. I couldn't make it work, so I
Okay.
had to be here, right? But to receive demonstrations on how to operate and maintain those facilities.
Okay.
So that's how close we are, right?
Okay.
We're in that
Yeah.
stage of the project.
So that line of the build out really has been completed as far as.
For the most part, it's
Okay.
mostly planting, site work,
Okay.
and some architectural features. There's architectural parts of the building construction end caps on beams, things like that, right? That need to be buttoned up,
You understood, yeah.
so that we can
Those details, those fine.
That's
details,
right.
Understood.
fully consider the project substantially complete and move on to punch list work.
Okay.
At which point do all these appurtenances get turned over to parks and become theirs to operate and maintain?
So my understanding is that upon final completion of the project, the general management would work with Nova Parks management on a transfer plan, which I think is built into our site development agreement, but maybe Alton can shed some more light on that.
Yeah, that was the intent in the agreements that we have with Nova Parks. It's tied to final completion of the contract, and then that triggers a 60-day period where then we set up the financial, the payback, the payments that are due to Loudon Water from Nova Parks and hand them the keys. But they've been with us hand in hand through construction and, like Sam mentioned, startup of these facilities, and we're planning for the board retreat to take you out there to see it, and then there'll be a ribbon cutting shortly thereafter, and all these things will start to fall into place.
Cool. Thank you.
Did you say that is this an appropriate time to have the board visit? To like, we had that previous visit.
Correct.
Is this getting in the way of having the board come out to see it, or I don't know?
No, we are planning for the June 4th, the board retreat, and we'll have a walk through the
okay.
facility. We do anticipate it will be very, very near complete and buttoned up by that point in time.
Okay, good.
We're happy to take you out there then.
Very good. Moving on to Goose Creek Industrial Park, SPS and Forest Main.
Oh,
Uh,
I had one other. What about filling of the lake? Is it in pretty good shape? Because we were having a problem there for a while.
Right, so the reservoir achieved maximum elevation around mid-January of this year. So yeah, that hurdle has been out of the way for a little bit now. So a quick peek at Goose Creek Industrial Park, SPS and Forest Main before we jump into a little bit of a deeper dive on Milestone Reservoir, which I know is another project that garners a lot of interest here. So this one is proceeding pretty well through the end of 2024. We are about 30% complete with our construction on the project. We've achieved the milestone of completing the gravity sewer outfall, and some of the structures have been erected, as you can see here in the slide. That's the control building already sort of sitting in its pad in its ultimate location there on site. We are about to start working in some of the pump station elements, some of the precast elements, drop them in on their final location before we move on to installation of equipment and startup and commissioning of the facility. So that's probably more of a sort of late 2024 item, early 25 item, but progress so far has been great. Archer Western's been very good to work with, and so thought I'd highlight that for the committee here this morning as well. And so sort of perhaps the main event on the capital program side here, Milestone Reservoir and Pump Station project. That project was approved by the board November of last year, received notice to proceed on schedule around mid to late December. And back then, the real main focus for us and the urgency was driven by some time of year restrictions, regulatory requirements that required us to complete clearing of the site and installation of the crossing across Sickling Creek, which, because it's considered in-stream work, needed to be completed before the start of April. And I'm happy to report that we were able to overcome all of those time of year restrictions and complete the work before those dates hit. It was actually pretty comfortable, even, dare I say. So right now we are about 5% complete on the job. We are approaching the start of site work, installation of the retaining wall adjacent to the WNOD trail, and some of the early steps in starting the construction of the pump station itself and the start of tunneling. Our first blast on the site coincidentally was yesterday, went off without a hitch. And that'll give way to mobilization of the tunneling crew, which is expected to start heavy civil work sometime in June. So a couple of points similar to what we tend to present on another one of our larger projects, the Broad Run expansion, which Rick will get into here in the coming slides. But so far, great communication between the parties. We have received a good number of submittals to stay ahead of all the work that needed to happen earlier in the job and some of the bigger work that's about to start. 25 RFIs have been answered. Coordination with TRAP and the Potomac Raw Water Pump Station, which is going to be a part of the commissioning steps associated with this project, given its connection to both facilities, is expected to start in Q3 2027. So not much to report on this part. Then, of course, in terms of construction completion efficiency, we are, like I said, in a spot where we were able to overcome time of year restrictions, and you know that those could have potentially delayed the project, you know, pretty substantially. So you know, kudos to the team on that. Claims and dispute not outstanding at this moment. Contractors projected completion, no delays claimed or reported at this point. No change orders executed yet. Which is not to say that, you know, we won't have any on the job, but so far, so good.
Yeah.
Perfect design so far. Any questions? We'll turn it over to Rick here for a deep dive on phase 2 of the Broad Run expansion.
Okay. So for the Broad Run
I
expansion.
do have one question.
Yeah.
You said there was a blast yesterday?
Yes, sir.
What time of day was that? Just for,
1:30 in the afternoon?
because I was out there. That's
Were you in the area?
Yeah, okay.
If you didn't feel it, that's a good.
Okay, so on our Broad Run expansion project here from 10 to 15 MGD, so we've been under construction for several years on this one now. We are about 96% spent of the revised contract value there of 78.4 million, and that's through the end of the first quarter. And then our substantial completion due date is September of this year, September 20th. And so as far as time elapsed, we're 88% spent or consumed on time elapsed for substantial completion. And then final completion is due 6 months later in March of 2025. And so we're 79% elapsed on time to final completion. Okay, so if we take a look at the pre-construction view of the project here, we've got all our work areas marked with red, and then advancing the progress to the end of end of the fourth quarter of 23. That's our status through the end of the calendar year, so December 31st. And then just to see the quarter over quarter difference here, as we'll pick up a few more green areas for completed areas, we'll add some more yellows for commissioning or testing and startup as well. So here's where we are at the end of this last quarter here, at the end of March. And so most of the areas are either complete or in a stage of commissioning. We've just got a couple areas under construction, and then the one area there that has not started construction through the end of the first quarter actually started construction in early April, and it's a very small work area. And I'll also add that this graphic doesn't show the yard piping that was completed on the project. So we had about 3+ miles of large diameter yard piping, and also a mile or two of electrical and fiber duct bank that went in as well in the early years of the project. So that work is all done, but unfortunately this graphic, it just doesn't capture that. Okay, on to our project summary here. So as far as the communication between the parties, so we're still have a very good working relationship with our contractor, Kokosing Industrial. We have answered approximately 575 requests for information, and we've completed 2,170 approximately submittal reviews that the contractor has submitted. As far as coordination with plant staff here at Broad Run, so we have completed around 575 coordination and shutdown requests. These are requests by the contractor to impact various areas of the plant that are needed to facilitate the construction. So quite a few of those that we have completed. As far as our construction completion efficiency, so I've presented it as sort of a completion percentage based on punch list items. So as of now, we're about 72% complete on punch list items. And again, punch list items are typically final completion items. These are the small touch-up pieces of work that are required for the contractor to get from substantial to final completion. So I feel like this is a very good indicator that the contractor is running the work to completion, and that being final completion. So 72% there. As far as claims, we don't have any claims that we haven't been able to reconcile with the contractor, so none are outstanding or lingering. Completion wise, we're about 1 month late here. Substantial completion is due in September, and we're tracking for the October timeframe based on the contractor's latest schedule update. So about 1 month late there. And then change orders, we still stand at 13 change orders completed on the project.
Just had a question. From my understanding, how is completion efficiency determined? I mean, what are the?
Yeah, so that takes all of the punch list related items. So if you remember, there were multiple work areas. There's probably 25 different work areas scattered throughout the site, and each of them are on a little bit different track of completion. And so punch list items are the work that's required for between substantial and final completion. So mostly it's the touch up, it's the final completion, final finish work that the contractor has to do. It might be like painting touch up or repair this, bent or broken bolt or a piece of metal or something like that. And so that number is an aggregate of all of those 25 work areas in terms of where the contractor stands with the punch list completion. So it's a pretty good indicator, pretty positive that they're 72% complete across the board with those punch list items.
I'm just curious, what's the threshold to determine whether it's green or yellow as well? Where's the threshold where you say, hey, it's like right now it looks like it's positive, which I understand with the 70%. Is it a certain threshold to be considered positive versus you would consider in a warning area for now?
So on that particular one, I would say if we were, and again, given the multiple work areas and the different schedules of each work area, I would say if we are 50% or less, I would probably have that one as an orange.
Okay, thank you.
Rick, I probably want to add, just because, when we looked at the milestone slide, we saw that I sort of qualified construction completion efficiency under the criteria of whether we were able to meet our time of year restrictions or not. I'd say it's context sensitive, perhaps. So,
project and activity.
Right, depending on what stage of the project and what the project needs are, perhaps we'll be sort of reporting on construction efficiency a little differently. And I think it's obviously more appropriate for the phase 2 expansion that we are reporting on punch list items, but
Okay.
perhaps for milestone, next challenge is, right, how well are we doing on meeting our tunneling schedule, which drives the critical path of the project? Again, not to sidetrack this presentation and make it about that, but just in the context of, construction completion efficiency, I think you'll see varying criteria on that across different projects, perhaps.
Yeah, well, thank you, Sam, for the clarification. That makes sense.
I have a couple questions.
Yes.
And how many pending change orders do we have?
So we are working on a change order right now. We expect that it'll be executed in the second quarter.
And if you could go back 3 or 4 slides, I think you had a delta between percent complete and percent spent?
Yes.
And is that, do you anticipate that there's pent up
So the,
cash request coming in later?
are you talking about the delta
The
between
96%.
96 versus 88? Okay, so spending will reach 100% at substantial completion, okay? So the last 4% of spending that you see is left will stretch. And so the contractor's rate of earnings will sort of plateau or kind of reach a
Yeah,
sort
I
of a
just- I
flat
just want
point there.
Not concerned about that because everything's been built. We're just starting everything up for the next. So, you know, all the physical stuff is in the ground and that's why we've paid for
Yeah,
it. So now
the
it's
ma-
really
Yeah, the
just
major
like my-
equipment's all on site.
And on the green, red, yellow, blue slide, when you're talking about punch list items. So, for example, all the items in green, can they be?
Correct. So that's most of the
out?
punch list items that I'm talking about are associated with those green items. So those green areas have made it to substantial completion. And then the contractor would complete the punch list items and then they would be qualify for final
But
completion.
they're being done concurrently. He's
They are,
punching out some
correct.
things as well.
So, yes, so while the remaining heavy construction and commissioning is going on, the contractor is also getting around to cover some of these punch list items.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Were there any other questions on this slide? No. Okay, so we'll get to our summary slides here of our active construction projects. So we've got 11 projects here. Over on the left here, we've got our contract time information in the left 3 columns. And then over on the right, we've got the summary contract price information for these 11 projects. And all of the ones that we've discussed today are on this list as well as several others. Any questions about any of these projects?
A question on the roofing replacements. You have 90% spent. And by all indications, it seems like the job is done. What?
Yeah.
What's with the remaining 10%?
So the
Are those
remaining,
punch list?
no, so actually the remaining 10%, the majority of that is some skylights that the contractor got a late start on getting their submittal approved. And so the skylights have not been completed yet. That's for buildings 27 and 32 in that particular project. And that's where most of that 10% is included.
And that explains 133% of the time.
They're a bit past the
Yeah,
contract
yeah.
time, so we're gonna have to work with the contractor to settle that project, yes.
Last curious question. Retainage. Do we maintain retainage in all of our contracts?
5%, yes. And so that's released after final completion.
And that includes all subs in the ladder, even the ones that were done a couple of years ago?
Okay, so we didn't have any projects that were completed in the first quarter of this year, so we'll skip on to our upcoming construction projects. So this is intended to just show what we anticipate starting construction in the next 6 months or so, these 5 projects. Any questions there?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good report as usual. A capital spending summary report.
Yeah, good morning. The spending report that'll be brought up here in a few moments will show the total spending through the end of March, the end of the first quarter. The projection was for 21.7 million and the actual is 16.2 million. And just a little comment on that. The projected curve that you see that projects spending throughout the year, that actually is developed based on information that is pulled together in the CIP development process. So every project when we're developing the CIP, so that's sort of in the September, October timeframe of last year. Every project manager, when they put their sheets together, they try to project what the spending for the next year will be, and they try to project both the amount of spending and the timing of that spending. And then we take all of those individual projections and we pull them together and we create sort of this then projected curve for the year. So because these projections were actually put together in September and October timeframe, it's not uncommon for the timing of the projections or the actual spending, the timing of the actual spending to kind of be off a little bit from what the projection is. I think so here we have about a $5 million deficit, or 25%. In looking at the difference between the projection and the actual for this year, there's about maybe 8 to 10 projects that make up the 5 million difference. And of those 8 to 10 projects, they're all projects that are underway. So the spending is going to occur at some point this year. It's just the projections were shown early in the year, and the spending is going to probably be lagging a little bit. Some of that $5 million is actually even invoicing issues where maybe in February or March, the contractors didn't get their invoices in time, and those invoices have already been processed in the month of April, and they'll show up on the April one. So just a comment on probably where most of that $5 million is. It's just really a matter of the timing of the spending. It's money that we anticipate will be spent, and there'll be a catch up here probably as the year goes along.
What was the number for last year at the end of the year, the percentage? You remember?
We closed out the year, boy, I want to say around 90% of the actual projection, right around 100% of the reforecast that was done at the middle of the year. But we completed the year right around 90%. Marty, I don't remember the actual number. I
just approximate.
Yeah, I could get you the actual numbers. Maybe next month I'll dig them out and bring them forward for next month. But I'm pretty sure it was right around 90%.
Any other questions? No? Well, it looks like we come to the end of the day. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
I second. All in favor? Aye. Very good. Thank you, folks.